Hi, welcome back guys. So this is the QA Job Bootcamp from beginner to hired, the evergreen tech job. So we are still in phase 2. We're on lesson 5, which is UI versus API versus integration testing. So understanding different layers of software testing. So what you'll learn in this lesson is what is UI testing, what is API testing, what is integration testing, differences between them, advantages and limitations, real-world examples, and why companies use all three. So in modern application, we have multiple layers. We have the front end, which is UI, so this is what users see and interact with. We have back end, which is API, which processes data and business logic, and then behind that we have database and services. So this stores and manages data. So what is UI testing? UI testing, aka user interface testing, testing the visual and interactive parts of an application. So this focuses on buttons, forms, navigation, layout, and user interaction. So UI testing example would be a login page testing. So the tester's actions would be open the login page, enter email, enter password, and click login button. Expected result would be that the user successfully logs into dashboard. What UI testing verifies? So the UI testing checks buttons work correctly, text fields accept input, error messages display properly, navigation functions correctly, and design appears properly on screen. Advantages of UI testing. So the benefits are simulates real user experience, validates a complete user experience, easy for beginners to understand, and detects visual issues. Limitations of UI testing are it's a slower execution, more fragile, UI changes can break tests, and harder to isolate back-end issues. So what is API testing? API testing is testing the back-end communication between systems. API stands for Application Programming Interface, so it allows applications to exchange data. API testing focuses on requests, responses, status codes, data validation, and business logic. So API testing example would be the request sent. This is the language that we will learn later, JSON. So the email is test@gmail.com and the password is password123 and the expected result is status success and token ABC123. So this will be in Postman. What API testing verifies? API testing checks correct response is returned, response time, status codes, data accuracy, error handling, and authentication. Advantages of API testing. The benefits are it's faster than UI testing, more stable, finds back-end issues early, better test coverage, and useful for automation. Limitations of API testing requires technical knowledge, no visual validation, harder for beginners initially, and cannot detect UI problems. What is integration testing? Testing how multiple systems or components work together. So the goal is to verify data flows correctly between connected systems. So an integration testing example would be an e-commerce examples. So the systems involved are the website's front end, payment gateway, inventory system, and database. So the result test scenario would be to verify successful payment updates inventory correctly. So when someone buys it, you have one less of that thing. And so integration testing would be if that system is working correctly. What integration testing verifies? It checks systems communicate properly, data transfers correctly, APIs work together, and no failures between components. Advantages of integration testing. Benefits are it detects communication issues, verifies real-world workflows, ensures systems work together properly. Limitations of integration testing. It's more complex to set up, difficult debugging, dependent on multiple systems, and can be very time consuming. So we have UI versus API versus integration testing. UI testing is test front-end, user-focused, slower, visual testing. API testing is test back-end, data-focused, faster, no visuals. Integration testing, it tests systems connections, workflow-focused, medium complexity, and multiple systems. So a real-world QA workflow. So example testing process. Step 1, API testing validates backend logic. Step 2, integration testing checks communication between systems. And step 3, UI testing validates full user experience. Why companies use all three? Each testing type solves different problems. UI testing checks user experience. API testing checks backend functionality. Integration testing checks system communication. Together, they improve software quality, reliability, stability, and user satisfaction. So the common tools that are used in UI testing tools: Selenium, Cypress, and Playwright. API testing tools: Postman, Swagger, and REST Assured. Integration testing tools: Postman once again, SOAP UI, and JUnit. Beginner QA career advice. Start with UI testing, easier for beginners to understand. Then learn API testing, very valuable skill in modern QA jobs. Eventually learn automation and integration testing, important for advanced QA roles. Key takeaways. Today we learned what UI testing is, what API testing is, what integration testing is, differences between them, real-world examples, and why companies combine all three. So your practice activity is identify the testing type, verifying login button works, checking API response status code, testing payment updates inventory, and verifying web page layout on mobile. So coming up next, we have lesson 6, in which we will be writing test cases like a QA engineering. So we have test case structure, positive versus negative testing, expected results, and real-world examples. And I will take you through Jira and writing test cases, test suites, and bugs. So I'll see you next time. Bye guys.